Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Friday, the 12th of May. Um, we're heading for Mother's Day on Friday, so if you haven't yet sent your mother a card or given her a call or something, maybe you should think about doing that. If your mother's no longer with you, say a prayer and give thanks for the beauty of the gifts that our moms have shared with us, if nothing more than giving us life and helping us to get to where we are without killing us. Today, I'd like to talk a bit about yesterday I talked about plot lines, and today I'd like to talk about our stories and where our stories lead us. You see, tomorrow, the 13th of May, will be the 24th anniversary of my ordination to the diaconate. So if you're not familiar with the Anglican tradition, in order to become a priest, you have to first be ordained a deacon. And a deacon essentially is a servant, one who serves in the church. And a deacon, our vows as deacons are we're called to work within the church to serve the people, but we're also called to go outside the church and to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with people out in the world, but then also return to the church and share the world with the church, to interpret the needs of the world to the church, and then take the church out to the world. And traditionally, the deacon would, in a liturgy or on a Sunday in a worship service, would read the gospel lesson and would prepare the altar for the priest for communion, and then would give the dismissal, would pronounce the dismissal, sending the congregation back out into the world, and then the deacon would lead us into the world. And every priest is ordained first a deacon. And in the church part, the part of the world where I come from, generally speaking, you're a deacon for 6 months before you're ordained a priest. And that is meant to be a time of discernment because not everyone is called to be a priest. And this is a time of learning what it is to serve and to work within the church and to discover, are you indeed called to be a priest in God's church? And I remember when I graduated from my master's degree in end of April, and the ordination was coming up on May 13th, and we were not aware of who would be ordained yet. They were still making those decisions. Some of us had to have job interviews, and because in my diocese at that time, you could not be ordained if there wasn't a job for you to be ordained into. And I had interviewed for the parish of Stratford, St. Stephen Stratford, and Trinity in Mitchell in Ontario. And for those of you who know the Shakespeare Festival in Stratford, that's the town I'm talking about. Um, I had interviewed there, but when upon graduation, I interviewed but did not know for sure whether I was going to be hired there. And we were all called, whether we were going to get the job or not. We were called to go to a pre-ordination retreat, which was really awkward because there were some of us who had been interviewed, others who hadn't yet been given a job or an interview, and there were also those of us who may possibly be ordained deacons, and there were people there who were already ordained deacons who were about to become ordained priests. So we were all gathered together at the Crieff Centre outside Guelph in Ontario. And I remember before I went, about 2 days before I went to the preordination retreat, I was really scared. I was really nervous about what was happening. About was I sure of this? I didn't know for sure if I was going to be ordained. I wasn't even positive that I wanted to be ordained. And looking back now, that's part of the ordination discernment that I find when I talk to other people who are discerning a call to ordination about whether or not do they have any hesitancy? And I'm not saying you have to be hesitant, but there's an element of, I think, of recognizing what a big step this is, that I always look for in someone who's discerning. And I get a little nervous when they're absolutely 100% believe I'm absolutely called to be a priest. Well, no questions about it. I believe that there should be some questions about it because this is a big step, a big launching into a way of life that isn't for everyone. And I remember right a couple of days, after graduation and prior to, like after I'd interviewed and then waiting to find out and getting ready to go on this preordination retreat, my neck seized up. Like I could not move my neck. I was in so much pain. It was awful. It was like I never felt that much pain before. Looking back, I think it was probably stress causing an old whiplash injury to flare up. But all I knew is I was scared, skinny of what was happening, and terrified that I would be called to ordination, and then terrified that I wouldn't, because if I wasn't going to be called to ordination, I knew now was done school, and how was I going to live? where I was going to get a job. And I remember we went to the preordination retreat, and part of the day was a silent reflection. And I went for a walk. It was it was like a Tuesday afternoon, beautiful afternoon. It was a bit of a breeze, the sun was out. I'm walking down a dirt road, and beside a tree, I looked down at the trunk of the tree at the ground, and there was a rock. There was a rock beside the tree, and I picked up the rock, and I thought, oh my heavens, what a beautiful rock. Isn't this rock perfect? And as I kept turning it over, I noticed there was a hole in the rock. And for whatever reason, that really bothered me, that this rock that I had thought when I was picking it up, and it just looked so smooth and textured and some pits in it, but it just looked like it looked well worn. And then there's a hole, like there is a hole in this rock. Not very deep, but there's a hole. And I remember being really frustrated about this. Like, God made this incredible rock and wore it away with weather and water and all the things that happen to rocks to make them the way they are. And I remember thinking, this is such a shame that God would make such a beautiful rock and then there'd be such a flaw. And I went through my week, and I kept the rock. Like, obviously, I picked up the rock and I carried it with me and I prayed with it. And I pretty much, except for supper and sleeping at night, I carried it with me everywhere I went. And all of a sudden I began to realize that the rock was like a metaphor for my life and for my future. God made me like this rock, this beautiful rock that's not exactly totally smooth. It's got some rough edges. It's got some pebbling and it's got some contours. And over here, there is this hole that doesn't really go anywhere, but it's deep enough to kind of wonder if you can shine a flashlight in it, where would it go? Maybe bugs hid in that hole, or maybe a snail crawled at it at some point. But the idea being that this rock is exactly the way this rock needs to be. This rock doesn't have to be anything but the rock it was created to be. And it doesn't need to look any way except the way that it was created and formed to be. Now, over the years, if I keep holding this rock and sharing it with others, and I use it a lot for groups when we're talking, as a talking stone that people can, whoever's holding the stone has the responsibility to share their thoughts and feelings, and those who do not have the stone have the responsibility to listen. So there's been a lot of hands have held this rock, and we keep this up, for the next several years. The rock will change. It will wear down in some places, and it will smooth out in others. And throughout that week, I began to realize that this rock was an indication to me that God was not calling me to be a deacon or a priest in the church because I was going to be a perfect deacon and priest, but rather God was calling me to be a deacon and then a priest in the church so that I could be a human deacon and a priest, that I would walk with the people God shared with me, placed in my care, that we could walk together and we could discover together and we could make mistakes together and we could be completely imperfect together. And in that togetherness, in our imperfection, is exactly where we would find Christ. That in that imperfection and in the wondering and in the frustration over not being perfect and the celebration of not having to be perfect, those are the very places that I would find my ministry, because those are the very places I would find God. I would find God within the people I served, in the situations I came across, in the emergencies that presented themselves, in the celebrations and the sorrows that I was privileged to be present in. And so I picked up this rock and I carried it home. And I have carried it with me for ordination retreats, because then again, after I was ordained a deacon, 6 months later, I went on an ordination retreat with the canon Gordon Simmons, who is a wonderful, wonderful priest, a retired priest in the Diocese of Huron, who led us through a completely different kind of ordination retreat. And I have had this rock. When I've been on retreat, I have taken it on retreats that I have led. And as I said, I've used it in in Bible study groups and gatherings in which we needed to feel comfortable to share our truth in a gentle, compassionate, and pastoral way. And this is my ordination rock. And I have had it with me, and I've lost it a couple times, but always found it. But keep it as close to me as I can, because it's a reminder to me of who I'm called to be as a deacon and as a priest. So I thank you to all my folks at Church at Home that you have allowed me, like this rock, to discover a new way of being a deacon and a priest. Prior to a couple of years ago, I would never have guessed that I would be doing this online YouTube thing and meeting so many of you and virtually online and through comments and having my life completely changed. You have helped me to continue to grow as both a deacon and a priest. And I believe you have helped me to become better at both. So thank you for being instruments of God's grace and goodness and teaching. Thank you for participating with me and becoming a virtual participant like this rock in my ordination and in the ways that I serve through my ordination every day, every moment of my life. So thank you for sharing this 24th anniversary with me. It is my pleasure and it is my humble privilege to walk with you and to celebrate with you and to be in sorrow with you. And I thank you that you hang out with me every day. God bless you. I will see you again on Sunday for Gospel and the Go and Monday for Church at Home with Rachael. Have a great weekend and happy Mother's Day to all of the women. You don't have to be a biological woman, a biological mother to be celebrating Mother's Day. I believe that every single person who is female or who identifies as female has had a powerful and beautiful influence on some child in their lives at some age. And so today or Sunday is your day as well. So happy Mother's Day and God bless you. Bye bye, everybody.